the oldest higher education institution in the United States and one of the most prestigious elite seats of learning in the world. But now Harvard University is under an unprecedented attack by the American government. The Trump administration is holding Harvard accountable for fostering violence and anti-Semitism. That's what the U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, wrote on X. And for coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. She announced that Harvard would no longer be able to welcome international students who make up a quarter of the university's student body. It's an escalation of a row over what has happened in universities since the Gaza war, with the government calling the move a warning to all academic institutions. Harvard is now suing the Trump administration, and a judge has just blocked the bill for now. But what does it mean for foreign students there and for free speech? Well, correspondents say it is Harvard that's bearing the brunt of the pressure being directed by Mr. Trump towards America's elite universities. Perhaps, they say, because it has pushed back hardest, having already defied demands that it alter its curriculum and hiring practices and hand over student records. But they say no institution is immune in what is now an escalating fight, and one that raises major questions about academic freedom and government authority.
Universities that they need.
就是比如说我申请的这个俄亥俄州立，它就是因为这个
I applied to Ohio State University and it has reduced the number of spots for international students due to in-state pressures, so I feel like it will still affect my chances of getting admitted. We are worried about it, but my friends and I feel like we don't seem to have any particularly good solutions to this issue, other than being pessimistic. The more optimistic friends of mine will see the midterm elections as a chance for change. As international students, we hope to have a relatively open and accommodating academic and political environment in the United States.
The U.S. president is someone who creates problems where there were none, so I think this policy, like the tariffs, may ultimately be difficult to carry out.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from California by the chief Republican strategist, Errol Morkoc. Errol, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I hope you're in California and not in Florida, because sometimes I know you kind of crisscross America as you do your job there. But the Trump administration steps up its row with Harvard University, one of the great educational institutions, not just in America, but in the world. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
Well, it's something that certainly has been a long time coming, and it's not just the last round of actions with the Hamas demonstrators, which was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. But this has become decades and decades of sort of elites versus the people, and that's where this has started to come to. There's a huge disconnect between the elite universities in this country and the actual people in this country. And as these elite universities have pushed their line, they've also lost sort of the allure or the veneer that protected them from outside questions. And in this situation, they've picked a fight with a Trump administration that has no respect for Harvard whatsoever. Pete Hegseth, he's a graduate of that university. He sent his degree back with return to sender written on it. So the amount of people from top universities who are in the Trump administration or have worked in this area, who all have terrible experiences from their time there. My time at UC Berkeley was marred by this exact type of complete one-sided viewpoint, violent protest, violent situations, discriminatory policies from the staff and faculty. And all of this has finally culminated in, I think, what is a little bit of a Trump revenge tour against the university that tried so hard to, I think, remove him and his supporters from power. So it's interesting to see a battle between free speech, which Harvard has on its side. It's obviously a private institution; it can do what it wants, and also the concept of public money. And if you are unwilling to work with the government that's asking for certain audits or certain meritocracies to be balanced as opposed to racial headcounts, then you have to quid pro quo, give or take. So it's a delicate one to unbalance, and certainly something that's going to have to go to the go to the courts, because Harvard's obviously been the biggest fighter, as you had mentioned earlier in the segment, of the Trump policies. But I think it's something they're going to have very little support from the American people. Americans don't see themselves as Harvard graduates, and I don't think they're going to win this one. But it remains to be seen exactly what the situation is, and if Harvard decides to back off, because if it doesn't get these 7,000 students enrolled, those students are going to go to other universities that have played ball with the administration and aren't going to lose the privilege that it is to be a registered and regulated U.S. university. And I think Harvard, for the first time, is realizing that maybe it's not the end-all, be-all for academia in the United States of America, and it might be tough for them to deal with that. But a lot of us have been very unimpressed with them over the last few years.
You said it was elite versus the people. I mean, is it elite versus the people, or liberals versus conservatives?
Well, that's a great point, because when you look at what they consider elite, it used to be these brand name institutions. And then when you look at the makeup of those institutions, you see that they're 90% left wing. And so now you have a situation where people are conflating eliteness with the brand name, and half of the country is excluded from the sort of conceptuality of that. And it creates a duality that isn't favorable to education whatsoever. When you go to an elite US university, there is one acceptable viewpoint. If you do not carry that viewpoint, you are ostracized. So it's very tough for a child who's 18 years old coming from in high school to want to buck that trend, to be put in the out group. So being a conservative on campus is what it used to be a countercultural thing in the 60s is now the countercultural thing today. And I think Harvard has lost its way. A lot of its graduates feel that way. A lot of times in the business world, if you go online right now, you go on LinkedIn, see how many people claim they went to Harvard Kennedy Business School because they got a certificate there. So they're selling these degree mills to people who they don't respect, by the way. There's so many situations where Harvard has come out and their professors have come out and said derogatory things about these certificate holder students and not equated them to real students. So eventually, again, the people in this country who looked up to Harvard no longer look up to Harvard. And that's why Harvard is going to have a tough battle in the court of public opinion. Whether or not they have their free speech rights is their business, but they might end up losing federal funding.
Well, on that particular issue, Harvard has in fact gone to court, and a judge has temporarily blocked any moves by the government to carry out its threat. So that's where things are at the moment. It'll obviously work its way through the court system. But in the letter to the university, the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that the students will have to transfer to other universities. I mean, how feasible is that? How are they going to get acceptance to other universities in 72 hours or whatever the time is?
Well, I suppose that's a little bit of the pressure that they're putting on Harvard and saying, look, that we have the real levers here to influence how the semester goes for you. Now, those students, obviously, if you're the caliber student to get into Harvard, there are going to be amazing universities across the country who would be lucky to have you. But that's not saying that's fair to that student. I'm not here to argue that that student who's caught in the crossfire of this political maelstrom is somehow to be blamed. It's a very unfortunate situation. When I was a student in the UK, there were strikes. You didn't have an education, but you were paying for an education. So things happen all the time when you're an international student that are outside of your control. And I personally feel badly for them. But I think that the onus is now on Harvard. We're not asking Harvard for anything extreme. We're saying, hey, please give us the documentation you have on students who have openly expressed beliefs such as death to Israel, death to America, death to the Jews, these sort of common tropes that we saw on college campuses, open anti-Semitism, chanting, like self-promoted video bloggers making this information. We asked for this data. We asked for a third-party audit to be able to come in and look at what are the viewpoints of this university. Do you have diverse viewpoints in this university? Because if you're going to take federal funding, you need to have diverse viewpoints. You can't just have one viewpoint. And if you're unable to produce anything along these lines, you're not willing to work with the U.S. government, well, they've obviously put this hard deadline on Harvard. And I think it's going to be on them if they want to fight it. But in the short term, those 7,000 students will need to find a different accommodation, and they will need to find different places to study. And I think maybe Harvard's $40 billion endowment, which is larger than many countries' GDPs, should be used to do that. They are very wealthy individuals, very wealthy corporations, some might say, hedge funds, you could call them. And the fact that they're grubbing for public money along the same lines is also kind of offensive to people who are putting their kids through state schools, and we're finding out that we're sending hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, or not billions, but hundreds of millions of dollars to Harvard, which is the wealthiest, most elite private university in America. It starts to raise eyebrows, and it's not going to go well for Harvard in the court of public opinion that way.
Well, I mean, you yourself, Errol, went to an elite university. I mean, UC Berkeley is one of the best in the world, let's face it. But the point, of course, and I'm sure you know this, I mean, universities like Harvard, they use that money to advance research, particularly medical research. And that's why the United States has some of the best medical centers in the world and the most advanced medicine in the world. And of course, Harvard is the second university to be defunded, and numerous others are under threat as well. I mean, if these international students transfer to Yale or Princeton or wherever, I mean, what happens if a month from now all of their international students lose their visas as well?
I would say it'd be incredibly irresponsible by the chancellors of the Ivy League and or various other reputable institutions around the country who would take them to then see this and say, you know what, I'm not going to comply with the Department of Homeland Security. I'm not going to comply with the president who's trying to make America safer. Remember, these were the people who went and they made an announcement in Congress when they asked them, do you condemn, basically anti-Semitic chants? They couldn't give a straight answer. And so eventually you get to a situation where that's the problem. And if we can solve that problem, there's not going to be a need for anybody to have these things revoked. I think they're playing a dangerous game with you're totally on point. There's a lot of critical medical advancements that come from this federal funding. So why is Harvard holding its researchers' grants back in exchange for protecting potentially students who have abrogated their limited rights as green card holders or as student visa holders who are guests in our country? And if they can't do that, then I think the onus is on them for restricting access to those funds, because we're happy to give those funds if they're willing to play ball with us.
Well, I mean, from what I understand, they're not trying to stop people from, they're not trying to protect people who are being anti-Semitic. They're simply they're protecting the concept of freedom of speech. And that is what an academic institution like that ought to do. Now, the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, said they were holding Harvard, as you mentioned, accountable for fostering violence and anti-Semitism. She accused the university of coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party on campus. I mean, that sounds bizarre, doesn't it? I mean, Harvard says it's been trying to work with the Trump administration to address some of the issues it has raised, but the administration has not been acting in good faith, and that this has not been part of an honest process. I mean, is all this pure and simple political retaliation, as Harvard has suggested?
No, and it's disappointing to hear Harvard's reaction when their head of biology was arrested by the FBI about 5 years ago for openly coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party. And with these Ivy League schools, as everybody kind of is aware, the dirty secret is there's pay to play. And you can buy your kids' way into these schools with big-time donations. And those big-time donations have been getting the sons and daughters of wealthy people in the Middle East and Far East into Harvard every year since basically the turn of the century, when that started to be the new funding apparatus. So their ties to the Communist Party certainly are questionable, and the ties of their researchers and how that research is being done and being conducted has also been substantially questioned as to the loyalties of some of their faculty and where the data is going. Again, I point to the head of the biology department being arrested by the FBI. Certainly, there's been a lot of coordination with open borders agendas that are and oftentimes seen to be basically the stateless sort of left-wing concept of no borders and we're all one world, which is out of Mao's textbook and out of the sort of communist playbook that we don't ascribe to. So it's not just it's not punishment. It's the fact that the majority of Americans voted for Donald Trump, but the majority of Americans very much oppose the ideologies that are coming out of Harvard or coming out of Berkeley or Stanford or these places. And it's not anti-intellectualism. It's the fact that people were looked to in their face and told, "Hey, you just had COVID virus, but you need to get the vaccine anyway." Even though they learned in high school without a college degree that you get inoculated from having a virus. So people started to then question and start to see these cracks and fissures in what was supposed to be the elite institutions. And those people have sent Donald Trump and his team in there to bring these people back down to the ground floor, because they've acted like they've kind of run the country, which they have to a great degree for the last few hundred years, and it started to become, I think, uncouth and unwanted. And the American people want to see behind the velvet curtain, and they look behind there and they see anti-Semitism, they see anti-Americanism, and they see, honestly, anti-intellectualism, because there's only one viewpoint, and you need to have contrasting viewpoints, and that's something that the top universities in America lack, and that's why this is happening to them now.
Well, I mean, Errol, I know you are, of course, a chief Republican strategist, but I also, we've spoken many times. I know you to be somebody who can be quite brutally objective. I mean, isn't this targeting of international students part of a broader dislike that this Trump administration has for openness in all its forms? I mean, openness to ideas, openness to people, openness to trade, etc. And that's what Harvard University represents.
I would say that to some degree, absolutely, there is a pushback, not to openness of ideas or good ideas. I think even the most staunch Trump supporter sees that Trump is somebody who listens to both sides, or he will listen to a disagreeing attitude. I think what it speaks to is that people are tired of the situation where 20 million people came into the country illegally. When you have this much illegal immigration, when you have this much unwanted openness, when openness is taken advantage of to the point where people feel taken advantage of, and you look at the American cities and they're all in slums and basically destitution, and you look at cities in foreign countries and they're much nicer than our cities, eventually you realize that perhaps this is the fatigue that was caused by unregulated immigration. When you have logical, smart, well-funded, and well-formulated immigration, you're not going to have pushback. When we're bringing in the best people, meritocratic processes, when the students who are admitted to our universities are admitted based on the qualities of their achievements, not their skin color, then people are going to be more positive. But even if that's right or wrong, once the tide shifts and people feel this, then they feel taken advantage of. And so then, yes, you do see a lack of openness that was there, because that openness was then taken by the prior administration, and it was run amok on what was, I think, a very tolerant, and I've always believed America to be, by the way, a very tolerant and open society that's open to change and open to different people. But when that was pushed too far, it certainly has a pushback. And Donald Trump, in some ways, as a nationalist, it doesn't mean isolationism, but it certainly doesn't mean the same open border, open door policy that he had before. And I do think that the international students, unfortunately, were caught in the crosswind here, and hopefully they can be a way forward for them, because they're obviously not to blame. But it has to blame the administrations before, both Democrat and Republican, for the last basically 20 years, that have brought us to this sort of the point where the American people are actually open to going after the universities, which obviously is an interesting concept when it's also the Republicans are a pro-free speech First Amendment party. So there's give or take, and you're completely correct to point that out. But I do think it's founded based on fatigue, not based on a want for that to be the forever policy of America going forward.
Well, thank you for that explanation. And just one more question, and we appreciate the time you've taken to be with us. Harvard has called this move unlawful. It's gone to court. It's managed to get a court to put a temporary stop to it. You think this is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court?
I think it will, and I think it will because it's Harvard. Harvard was founded before America was founded. I think 1666 Harvard was founded, or 1688, something, before. 1776 was when we were founded. It is the talisman of the Ivy League, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court when they were found out to basically have race-based admissions The Asian American students sued Harvard, and that went to the Supreme Court. I would be shocked if this doesn't go to the Supreme Court. However, I think Harvard has a strong case. They're a private institution. They have enough funding and outside donors to maybe make up for this. And ultimately, they have the First Amendment on their side. So if they want to be a private institution and do that and forego federal funding, I think they'll go to the Supreme Court and they might actually win.
Errol, I want to thank you very much indeed. Really very interesting talking with you. Errol Morkoc is the chief Republican strategist. He was talking to me on the line there from California.